record, hopefully. All right. Well, it is my privilege to introduce a living legend in the network marketing industry, a leader that is still leading after many years. Joe Garcia started in the industry in 1993, still leading. He's been to over 60 countries that he's spoken in around the world. He's mentored people that are become incredibly successful in some cases, and in many cases have just found a way to make that extra money that they need to take care of their families. So Joe, welcome to the show and congratulations on an awesome career.
Oh, thank you, John. I once heard that you have to be at least 60 to be called a legend. So I'm nowhere near that yet.
Well, unfortunately, I am, but you'll get there. Hang in there, you'll get there. So
Okay.
Joe, a little bit about your career. I know you started in 1993. I know you've been the top earner in your company now for many years. And in those many years, what would you say the greatest impact that you have had on people has been?
The greatest impact. I've always been the leader that led by example in all areas of my life. And I realized many years ago, it's actually 1995, I had one of my mentors back then, Tom Hopkins, who was in my upline at the time. And he called me up. He said, Joe, he said, hey, kid, I love to come into your city. I see you're exploding the business. I want to take your business next level. So I want to do one of my famous boot camps. All you have to do is fill the room. So I worked for 90 days. We set the event 90 days from that moment. I worked for 90 days that filled that room. We had over 2,000 people show up to that event. So I'm in the back of the room and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be a millionaire overnight, because of this event. And I was so impressed with the amount of people that showed up. He was impressed. He did an incredible job on the sales techniques. Tom was really famous back then for his sales strategies. And these were strategies that I used. So all the basics of sales, all the closing, the puppy dog approach, et cetera, et cetera. After the event, I'm counting the dollars. I can see myself reach my dreams in network marketing. And about 3 weeks later, the volume doesn't grow as much as I expected. So I give Tom a call. I said, Tom, you're incredibly fantastic. You did all what you needed to do. Your tips and your training was just top 1%. I'm using it. It's working for me, but nothing's happening. Can you tell me why? Did I do something wrong? And he responded, hey, kid, we planted some incredible seeds. You're going to start seeing the results probably 90 days later. Well, John, 90 days later, it didn't happen. Okay. And I realized it was a defining moment in my life that I realized that all those people that came to that event were primarily part-time people working the business. They had everything in their hands to succeed. But what happened is when they went home, their self-image did not change. Their self-esteem did not change. All their habits that they were doing prior to that event did not change. So that's when I realized that instead of focusing on teaching people the basics, it's about focusing on personal growth. Because I realized if you teach people how to grow their mind, they'll figure out the rest. And that's when I started to pour my training, my philosophies into personal development. And I did it over and over and over again. I started seeing people grow into leaders because of my message, because of what I did personally, to grow. Because on the scale of 1 to 10, when I got started, I was a -10. And that summer, I had a friend of mine who'd been in the industry for a long time. I looked up to him and we were on this cruise in Lake Ontario. And he turned to me and said, Joe, in all my years of network marketing, I've never seen anyone grow as much as you grown. And I thought to myself, geez, that must have been really horrible because I'm nowhere near where I want to be at, right? But that event was a really great teaching principle for me and what I needed to focus to build a giant team.
Wow. Wow.
So to answer your question, that I think that message has paid forward millions of times over around the world. Even with people that have left the business, I'm sure many of them have come back to me and said, Joe, you changed my life, or, that event in 1999 changed my life, even though I'm not working the business, this is what it's done for me.
Well, you've changed a lot of lives. I've met a lot of your distributors around the world in my travels, and you've done a great job inspiring people forward. So compliments again. I have my own little Tom Hopkins thing I'll share with you real quick. I think it was 1984. He was speaking in New Jersey. So I went to see him, and I was very shy, believe it or not. Not now, it changed. But one of the things that changed was, it's funny, Tom's coming out of the men's room. And, I'm 6'3". Tom's maybe 5'5" if he's lucky, right? He's coming out of the bench, like, oh my God, Tom Hopkins. I'm like, I'm here to hear this guy talk, So I started talking to him, and he took his business card, and I'll never forget this, Joe, because Tom's a great guy, as you know him a lot better than I do. But he wrote on the back of his business card, "Do what you fear most," because I had told him I was kind of afraid to talk to people. He said, "Do what you fear most." He wrote it down. I stuck it in my wallet. I probably had that thing in there for 20 years. I've misplaced it now, unfortunately, but Tom was a great mentor. So let's talk about self-development, though, a little bit, Joe. I know you've been featured in many publications, including my latest work, Leave Nothing to Chance. When you read Leave Nothing to Chance, you're one of the stars of the book. Your story is in there, of course. But of the 15 principles, which one grabbed you, and elaborate, if you would, on why that particular one grabbed you?
John, one of the great things I love about your book, okay, we all have read books that were brilliant, but most of the time the authors are taking it from things that they've read or things that they've studied before. With your book, it was all about experience. You can actually tell that you've read, that you're well read, but you've gone through those experiences, which creates even more of an impact. And that's one of the great things about longevity in our business, is that you can share experiences, not something that you've read in a book, or not something that you went to a seminar and learned about. It was through your work and working with people. So one of the principles, which I think is the most important principle outside of your dream, is commitment, is the chapter on commitment. And I look back at another defining moment in my life. June 23rd, I was invited to a meeting. I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I knew within a couple of minutes that was the vehicle to my dreams, because I already had my dream very clear before that meeting. And it kind of led me to that meeting. And when I went home that day, I looked myself in the mirror and I promised myself I would never think about quitting. I had already made a determination that I needed to be all in to make it work. And I realized that because of prior to that, in my sports life, because I had a scholarship in soccer. I played high-level hockey and soccer. So I realized in order for me to succeed, I needed to be all in. And I was all in. So I took that philosophy into business, and real important, because when I was in front of that mirror, I knew the only power I had as a human being was my word. And if you break your word to yourself, you lose your power. So, John, do you remember with our parents, I remember with my dad, when he would lend money to people, at that time, in that generation, they didn't have to sign a contract or any kind of agreement that, yes, you need to pay me back with this much interest. It was just your word, and people would follow through with their word. What has happened, unfortunately, over time, people use their word very lightly. And that's the only power that you have as a human being, is your word. Your commitment is your word to yourself. So for the longest time, my greatest fear was dying before I had accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish. I could just visualize that. It was a huge fear of mine. and I could be at the gates of heaven and say, please send me back. I'm not completed my work here. I got some more goals to achieve. That was my greatest fear. And for some, that still drives me, is to do what I need to do, Wow. So commitment, you guys nailed it 100% on there through your experience. And unfortunately, too many people don't make that commitment that they're not going to quit, or don't even think about quitting. That was the other thing that I did, is I never allowed myself to think about quitting.
Great. Wow. Well said. Very, very powerful. So let's go back, Joe. So you, as a young guy, whether it was in your sports career, maybe it was in your academics, or maybe it was when you got in network marketing in '93, somewhere along the line, somebody put a book in your hand that's had an impact on your life. What was the book?
It was Unlimited Power by Anthony Robbins. That was the first book.
Wow.
That was the first book. That meeting on June 23rd, it was a Super Saturday where we had all kinds of trainers up in the front of the room, and speaker after speaker talked about personal development. And instead of listening to Madonna and Michael Jackson in your car, turn your car into a University on Wheels, which was that was the first time I ever heard of that, right? So my brother was going through some challenges and depression at that time, and he was listening to get him outside of that depression and what he was going through. He was listening to Anthony Robbins. So I picked up Anthony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power, and that was my first book I read on personal development.
Wow.
And what happened to me, John, is that in the 90s, I must have read maybe 1,500 books. You should have seen my library. I would go to the library to get audio cassettes and tape them, because a lot of those from Augmendino, it was difficult to get, I'd get my hands on Amway Tape of the Week Club, and Tape of the Month Club. And by 1998, everything started to sound the same to me. I was actually just reading, just going through the motions. And I thought to myself that this is wrong. How do I get myself to the next phase? And that's when I said, look, Joe, why don't you focus on a few books that resonate with you and just study it? Study the material. So I went down to like 5 or 6 books that I read over and over and over and over again. And then I would bring the other odd one book in, and if it resonated with me, I would read it 15, 20, 30, 40 times. And my personal development just went through the roof after that. In 2001, I got a series of Born Rich tapes by Bob Proctor. And Bob lives in the Toronto area like I do. Never heard of him before. Can you imagine that?
Huh.
And it was like those tapes were meant for me. And I listened to those tapes every morning for an hour while working out for 2 years straight. I could do that Born Rich seminar with my eyes closed. And my income went up tenfold at that time because of my studying of the material.
Great. So, 1,500 books. The top 3, and I know this is a really hard question when you've read 1,500 at least, and you've probably read more than that, I'm sure, through the years. If you had to say, hey, if I was a 16, 17-year-old kid sitting in your office right now, and I said, Joe, what are the 3 I have to read? What are they?
So number 1 book that I promote through my organization when they get started is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. And because it's an easy book to read, plus it introduces people to the laws of the universe, which are very important. If you don't understand the laws, it's very difficult to navigate the world, your world. So that book is definitely number 1. And I've seen it become a game changer for people around the world. I've read that book now. I just finished it again in the last month. So that's definitely number 1 on the book. In my personal development, As a Man Thinketh Too by James Allen is another one. And an obscure book called Consciously Creating Circumstances is another book that one of my go-to books.
Wow, great.
And those are very old, and anything written by Neville is very powerful. Also very deep. It's tough to get into a lot of his stuff because of the language. But manifesting, John, is a passion of mine. So I realized one of the things you're going to start to notice about me, you'll ask one question, I'll go into so many other tangents. But early on, I started realizing I was manifesting a lot of great things into my life without having the skill sets yet. And I couldn't eloquently share with people what I was doing, you know? So I would be contacting 10 people and getting all these great results without the skill sets yet. And it's another person doing the same thing, talking to the same people, wasn't getting my results. So I didn't know what I was doing properly. Came down to my attitude and the way I looked at life. And also because I fell in love with my dream. And so anything to do with manifesting, I studied it millions of times. You know, the systems out there, the thought process, you know, well before, you know, something like The Secret came out that exposed people to the law of attraction, you know? So anything to do with manifesting, that's been a passion of mine. It's teaching people how to manifest things into their life. Working harder, working smarter rather than harder.
Wow. You know what's amazing about that, when you mentioned Waddles, I had a conversation with some people that I'm actually in another book and it was amazing to me how many networkers did not know that Waddles preceded Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, and so many of the concepts and ideas came from Waddles. You know, but it's funny because the first time I heard of Waddles was from Charlie Tremendous Jones, who ironically, his daughter, Tracy Jones, I interviewed the other day. She now runs you know, the Tremendous Books company, but it's just so funny. But yeah, great stuff. You know, listening to you is like a self-development, how it should be taught in school. Because without those basics, you're never going to get anywhere, frankly. So let's go another place. So I walk in your home there in Oakville, Ontario this afternoon. And what are you reading right now? What's on your coffee table?
Well, I just finished. I'm actually reading a book called Manifestation Key by Adrian Cooper. He's not a well-known author. He's out of the UK. He's very outside of the box thinker. He has a science degree. And I've read that book. Maybe it's only 70 pages, but multiple times, and I'm reading it again. And the previous two books, I read Born Rich, once again by Bob Proctor, you know, and Science of Getting Rich I've read within the last month.
Great stuff. Big fan of Bob Proctor for many years, by the way. Great guy. So Joe, let's go another direction here. You've started so many people and become successful in your company and in our industry. And what's your advice, whether you want to give it from a standpoint of short term, you know, first couple of days, first 48 hours, or first month, or first quarter? You know, I'm a new distributor. I just signed up today. I'm sitting in your office there in Canada, and you say, okay, John, here's what you need to do in this time span to get your business started.
So, John, I'm going to answer that question with a story, my story. In my once I graduated from school, from college, I got a job because I wanted to be a NHL hockey player, but that wasn't going to happen. And so I got a job as a Zamboni driver, you know, up in northern Toronto, making $5.50 an hour. It was an incredible job. I loved it because I was around the rink and, you know, driving the Zamboni and being around professional hockey players, that kind of thing. And then I merged into my second job ever, and that was my last job. Is I got really good at managing people, and because I was committed all in, and I got a job as a fitness manager of a major club in Toronto. So I had a bar and restaurant, pool, patio, squash club, racquetball club, the fitness area, and everything else. And in Christmas '92, the owners of the company said, Joe, you've done such an incredible job. We're now able to sell our club for millions of dollars of profit. So I was newly married at the time, kid on the way. And that was really the first time I enjoyed freedom in my life, because I could play squash during the day, while I was working, that kind of thing. And I was expecting some kind of remuneration, some kind of profit sharing. And the owners, never heard from them again. And I realized at that moment that I was building someone else's dream instead of mine. So I promised myself I would never work for someone else again. So you imagine going to your wife and said, dear, I'm never going to work again. Laughed at me. She was living with us. And God bless her soul, she motivated me that day. She laughed because she was concerned that her daughter married a deadbeat, who's not going to want to work. So a couple of months later, the biggest defining moment of my life is I don't know what compelled me, or I came home and started to write down what I wanted my life to look like 10 years from that moment. And the top 3 things on the list was, number 1 is I wanted to work from home, because I wanted to be that dad to be with my kids, right? Because my parents were immigrant parents, worked 2 jobs. They also had a cleaning business. So they were always working. I started working at 7, helping them clean offices. So that affected me as a father growing up, when I became a father. Second thing on my list was I knew the key to freedom was being a business owner. And because in the squash club, the guys that were playing squash during the day all own businesses, so that was a clue to me, find a business you can do that, can play squash during the day when everyone else is working. And the third thing was a dream home. I knew that if I was going to work from home, I was fall in love with a dream, a dream home. So I had all the places I wanted to visit and everything else. And thank God my conscious level at that moment was I saw this on the list and I said, I can't focus on all this stuff. I want all these things. What is the one thing that I can focus on, that I can fall in love with, that if I get that, all the other things on my list would come? And that was the dream home. So I focused on this dream home. I cut out pictures. I fell in love with it. It was my purpose in life. It's just to get this dream home. And a couple of months later, I'm in my local library and a gentleman walks up to me and introduces me to network marketing, And then he did such a poor job in following up. I guess he didn't think I was going to be a great distributor. He sat down with me at a Howard Johnson's about a month later. He called me up. We sat down. It was the worst one-on-one presentation. Worst. He didn't touch any of my hot points. Again, he did a 3-way call a month later again. So he did everything that you're not supposed to. So I ended up meeting with his sponsor, which Tony Chanel, which we discussed earlier. And Tony pulled out his commission check for his 5th month. And my eyes opened up. It was only like $3,500. I thought that was pretty impressive 5 minutes into a business. And then that Saturday, I was invited to a meeting. And then sitting in the back of the room, I knew within a couple of minutes. It's like that born again Christian moment. Your body, God was speaking to me from head to toe. I've never looked back from that. So to answer your questions, I had fallen in love with my dream, and I manifested that guy in the library in the middle of the day. That wasn't a coincidence. I made it happen. And because I fell in love with my dream, I'm in that meeting. My internal guidance system, my Holy Spirit, whatever your faith is, was speaking to me head to toe. It was my guidance. And I was at that moment so clear that this was my vehicle to my dream. And that's why I went home and, made that 100% commitment that I would never quit, because I knew where I was in my life at that moment and the amount of work that I needed to work on myself to get the results. I needed to make that commitment. It's kind of like Napoleon, the great general. One of the reasons why he won so many battles is because he would burn the ships after his troops landed on an island or a place, because they knew they had nowhere else to go. So they fought. That was a commitment built in. Just think about it. You have nowhere else to go. You have to fight, or it's you're dead. So that's what I looked at in terms of my career. So I hope that answers the question.
It does.
So
let me tag on one other part of that question, okay? Because of the current situation, the pandemic that's unfortunately existed now for the last year, I see in my business, and I'm sure you do in yours, right? And I'm sure our colleagues in every company in the industry are seeing the same thing. If I had to categorize it, okay, I would say two groups of people. There's guys in my age group, late 50s, early 60s, that perhaps they had owned a business, perhaps they had been successful in somebody else's business, or perhaps the business that they had, whether they owned it or somebody else did, is just not going to come back, right? Because one thing that's happened, of course, is people realize they can do what you and I are doing right now using technology. So a lot of things aren't going to come back. That group of people, there's a lot of them looking at our industry for the first time.
Yeah.
Second group is that young group, that that 25-year-old. They've got all these skills. They can work an iPhone. They can launch a space shuttle with their iPhone, but they have no clue how they're ever going to make a living and get off their parents' couch.
Correct.
If we took those two groups of people, what is Joe Garcia's number one bit of advice why they should at least take a serious look at any company in our industry?
I answer this question: what is it that you want more of in life, or what is it that you want less of in life? Because that speaks to their heart. And I was, one of the challenges in our industry, a lot of people get involved through their brother-in-law, sister, through a family member. They come in with one little toe and they're just trying things out. Maybe they get some great results with the product that wakes them up. So when someone wants to develop a business, I know we have to get back to the basics and really get to that dream. Because if there's not a dream, they're not very clear on that, it's easy to quit. There's nothing anchoring, because the investment in the business doesn't anchor them in. So I've spent a lot of time over the years, doesn't matter what age group there is getting down to what they really want, getting down to that basic. Unfortunately, and you know this, John, probably over 90% of the world, you can ask that question and most people don't know, because we've been programmed, especially if you're in your 50s now and you had all this experience. We've been programmed not to dream because we're afraid of failing.
Wow.
We're afraid of failing, or failure is too, if your dreams are not greater than your fears, you're never going to act. So that's why we have this in any business. That's just not network marketing, direct sales. In any business, there's an attrition because people don't know what they want, which is the basis to everything in life. If you know what you want, if I look back at my years, last 27 years, I could see clearly how I was guided. My first company I went into network marketing went bankrupt 3 years in, and I was actually very close to qualifying to the top. I thought I lost my dream, but I remembered that when you have a dream, then when those things happen, you have to have the faith that it's leading you to that next step. And that's what happened. That had to happen for me to be where I am today. And we can all go through our experiences in our life and see those defining moments and how, wow, that was guided. That was guided. For example, I always tell people, when you're in love with your dream, you are going to be guided 100% of the time. And you got to listen to that guidance. I'm in 1997. I come back from a meeting. It was a tough week that week. Lots of people quitting. The company that I had just joined, we're going through some financial challenges. The president was kicked out. There was a lot of turmoil, and that was a decision that I made. So the company went bankrupt in 96. I looked at a lot of companies, joined this other company, and these things started to happen after a year. Okay. So I turned on the TV, it's midnight, Larry King's on, and he's interviewing this author for a book. Okay, and she just finished a book. She's a psychic, Sylvia Brown, and something inside me, John, told me, Joe, you got to buy that book. And unlike most times previous, I didn't. So a year later, I'm in my daughter's having swimming lessons. There was in that rec center, there was a library there. I get another library story. And as I have time to kill, I go into that library, and the first book that I see right there is her book. And I remembered the feeling. So when I read that book, I knew why I was told to read that book. It was incredible. And I can give you thousands of these types of experiences over years, because I was so focused on my dream. It just led me to these things, you know? Well, and I'll just share with you one last story. Is in '98. So that year, the company's going through these financial challenges, and we get all the leaders on to a conference call. They just hired a new vice president. And in '98, all these leaders, they're all six-figure income earners. And it was like after about 15 minutes, I thought, am I on another company's call? Like, I couldn't believe the negativity from all these people, you know, from the back orders and everything else. 35 minutes in, I had to say something. You know, I had to say something. And an hour later, I hung up and I go, where are these people seeing what I'm seeing? So all these people, because of their attitude, because they lost sight of their dream, they were looking at all the negatives and why things are not moving forward and all that stuff. And all I was focused on is, what do I need to do today and tomorrow to get to that next level? And, you know, all those people, 22 years later, I think only one of them is still in the industry. So these were people who were making six figures, five-figure monthly incomes in the late 90s. That was a lot of money back then. And now all of them are out of the industry, all because, compared to myself, because of they lost sight of their dream and they focused on the wrong things.
Well, that is such an amazing, it's an amazing story. And it does happen. It does happen. People forget why they got in the industry. Instead, they want to look at all these other things instead of their vision. Very, very well said. So
in your book, you have a chapter on challenges. I think it's the second chapter, right?
Yeah.
Is it the second challenger? Yeah. And you talk very clearly about how you see things, and how clearly it's just all about attitude. But when you're in your dream and you're focused on, you're in love with it. So for example, when you first got started, when you fell in love with your wife, John, you didn't have to remind yourself, oh, I better spend the next 10 minutes to think about her. She was always playing in the movie in your mind. So your dream needs to be that way. And when it does, your attitude changes. You start seeing things clearly and differently than everybody else. You know, so no matter what challenge comes along.
Well, you know, it's the thing that I get talking to you is an amazing leadership energy. You know, all leaders are readers. We've talked about that a little bit today, right? 1,500 books, and you know that says it all right there. I mean, there's no real. If you and I were talking to each other, and somebody told me about you and they said, well, the guy's read 1,500 books, I could stop right there and say, well, he's got to be one of the most successful people, and not only in his company, but in his industry, because all leaders are readers. So, you know, you illustrated that so well today, but what's your thoughts on that comment?
You know, there are some comments that we say in the industry that I don't agree with anymore.
Okay.
I just don't take it for granted. You know, so for example, John, in the 90s, I used to hear all the time, you got to pay the price for success. Okay, to me, that was huge negative. I didn't want my kids to pay the price. I didn't want to be that dad 25 years later when they're 25 and said, I wish I spent more time with them. I wish I took on more vacations. I didn't want my kids to pay the price for my dream. And so I thought to myself, how can I do this? So that's how I got into manifesting. I wanted to know how to manifest things faster, better, quicker without working, 80 hours a week or 90 hours a week building your dream. Like yourself, in the 90s and in the 2000s, we were going to meetings. I loved going to meetings, right? But and you talked about balance in your book. I scheduled time for my kids as they were growing up. So I never was that dad. I never allowed them to pay the price for my dream. So leaders are readers. So the goal for us as leaders is we need to help raise the consciousness of people in our team so they can do the rest. They can figure out the rest. If we're spending so much in today's world, you and I can go onto the internet, go onto YouTube, look at a tutorial and learn how to become an engineer and build buildings. So information is available to us. It's not the how, because the how is easily explained all over the world now in any topic. It's always on the why. That's the difference maker. So your comment that leaders are readers, I've known some really great leaders that don't like to read, but they listen to podcasts. They're always listening to something or watching movies that impact them and that kind of thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I do like to read personally, but I become a podcast junkie. When I go to the gym, I have a gym about 4 minutes from my front door here. So even with the snow in Dallas, I've been there all week. It with no heat, but I'm always listening to a podcast and at different things. Some are on religion, some are on our business, some are people totally unrelated, but you're absolutely right. There's always a way to get that information. So Joe, talking about that for a minute, I know you've written a book. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I've spent a lot of time perfecting my manifestation system, and going over what I do daily, because it's your consistent habits over a period of time that creates the results. It's like another fallacy in the industry, John, is massive action will produce incredible results. Okay, here's the things nobody talks about is you got to follow up that massive action. So if you go all out for 90 days and you burn yourself out and you're not doing the simple things after that, you just wasted a lot of 90-day work. So I'd much rather have someone who's just consistent, 2 people a day or 3 people there, even 1 a day, showing the product, showing the business over a period of time. Those consistent habits with the right mindset you will manifest great things. So I started putting together a 5-step system that people have used through my team and other network marketers around the world that got results. Simple 5-step system. It's a book you can read in 15 minutes that you put it by your bedside so you can read it over and over again and just follow the system and you're going to produce the results. And I've given it away for free. Like I don't even ask people for their email address or to increase my database. Just go to my website, download it. It's in 3 languages now, and because of the demand, I'm putting in another 10 languages. So it's a book I've had some huge feedback on.
So feel free to give that link if you would, and love to have everybody that hears from you.
whyjoegarcia.com. So WHY my name.com, and you can download the book there. Great. Best year ever.
Great. I love that. We have a mutual friend, I think, that loves that expression too. David Avocado Wolf, you know him? Any chance?
Yes.
Yeah, he uses that same expression all the time. I borrow that expression too. I love that because it's so positive. I mean, who couldn't get a positive charge out of that title? So, well, thank you for sharing that. So, Joe, last kind of question here. You have been all over the world. I follow you on Facebook and over the years, and I see you're everywhere. How many countries have you been in, worked in, and besides beautiful Canada, what would be your favorite place in the world?
I've been probably over 60 countries now, which has been a blessing. One of the toughest things, so one of the things I realized early on, John, the greatest personal development program or the greatest investment that you can make into yourself and your family is traveling. Okay. And I always encourage my leaders to travel because it grows them more than anything else. And I've seen through my journey where you go into these foreign countries, going to assimilating the cultures. And when you're working a business, it's different than traveling for vacation. Like you really got to get into the mindset of the people and bonding them with them and gaining their trust. All these little skill sets that you would never get that from a book, you know? So the travels have grown me considerably. I've got thousands of travel stories. Yeah, I got one in Dallas, if you don't mind me sharing.
Go ahead, sure.
You know, which is, so I was on a US tour. I'd been in like 6 cities in a week. I'm staying at the Omni Hotel in Dallas, which is a hotel I would frequent over those years, you know. And you know how when you're going to hotel, every hotel looks the same to you eventually, right?
Yep.
So I get back to my room around the hotel around 2 o'clock in the morning, and I forget what room I'm in. So I'm now in the elevator. I'm convincing myself what floor am I in, and so I convinced myself I'm in room 305. You know, so I get out of the elevator. And I'm praying to God, please, I don't want to go back downstairs. I'm just exhausted. My key worked. I go, fantastic. I completely take all my clothes off, go into the washroom, didn't even have time to have a shower. It's just totally exhausted. And I hear the shower on. And I thought, did I take a shower earlier today? I didn't even remember using the hotel room. So as I was opening the door, there was a woman there completely naked, and she screamed, and I screamed. So I'm thinking, oh my God, my first reaction, I got to run. I got to leave, you know. But I'm trying to explain to her while she's screaming that I'm not a rapist, what happened, and, you know, I've screwed up and everything else. I'm thinking, how in the world did I get into this room? And so I put on my clothes, and she's calling 911. And all I hear on her end is, help, I'm being raped, someone's broken into my room, sexual assault, blah, 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 right? That's what I'm hearing. Wow. So now I'm deciding, I got to run. And then I thought, if I run, I'm going to be, because I freak at this hotel all the time. So I told her I'm going to wait outside the room, and she's still screaming. You know, I felt so sorry for her. So about 5 minutes later, I hear massive amount of footsteps up the stairs, like, boom, 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 boom. Now, they come up through the stairs and some through the elevator, these police officers, and they see me. And they immediately run out, pull out their guns, and they tell me to get down on the ground ASAP, you know? So I'm doing, you know, I'm trying to explain to them what happened. So they get me up, I'm in handcuffs, I'm telling them, look, all you have to do is call the manager, I'm here all the time. You know, this was a big mistake. So the manager comes along and he's telling me, Joe, this is impossible. You cannot get into any rooms with the keys, you know? I said, well, this is what happened. So I pass him on the keys, and there's for a split second, I'm thinking, I could see myself in the Dallas Morning News, you know, top network marketer is in jail for sexual assault. There goes my career. You know, how am I going to explain that, right? So I'm praying that the key works, and it did.
Wow.
And what had happened is when I checked in, they gave me the master key.
Oh, man.
You know, your program, and I could open up any door. And the police officers apologized. And I said, don't worry about it. I just take care of the woman. She's in, she needs some help. And what happened is the police officer said, you're really lucky. You're in Texas. If you went into any other room, they probably would have had a gun.
Probably.
So what happens now, John, when I get into a room, I'm looking under the bed. I'm looking at every square footage. Well, that's one of the funny stories I've had, you know, so.
I can imagine. So what would you say, you know, you've got a lot of exotic places. What's the most exotic country you've been to?
I've done events in places like El Sharm el-Sheikh, which is an island off the coast of Egypt. That was pretty cool. The Canary Islands, Tenerife, did incentive trip and over there. That was really cool. That's off the coast of Africa, on the West Coast. I love Italy. I've been there numerous times. Asia is, typically, and throughout Europe, I've been almost every country in Europe. Russia, I've got incredible stories, east to west. The great thing about Russia is such a huge country. It's 12 different time zones.
Wow.
I've done meetings in the middle of winter in places like Siberia, way up there in the north. They have more people living in the north, in the Arctic, than anywhere in the world. Mm. So Asia is cool because, have you been over to Asia,
oh, yeah,
John?
Yeah, many times.
It's so different culturally, from country to country, which is really cool. And then, like you have a massive team in Latin America. I just started building down there 5 years ago, which love the food, like in places like Peru. And I did a tour a couple of years ago in Peru in 5 cities, which was so culturally different in all these cities. It was fantastic. Same with Mexico. So don't have a favorite, because I know someone's going to listen to this, so watch this.
Yeah. I was just thinking that. Well, it's been great that you've had such tremendous life experience on top of business experience. So just Joe, in closing, last thought to people listening. What's your simplest thing that you can tell them as a takeaway from our interview that they can do to build their self-development, build their business, and most importantly, build their lives?
So if we have 3 minutes, I'm going to end with a story, which will answer that question 100%.
Please. Go ahead.
So let's say tonight you watch this podcast, you heard from the incredible John Solidar and myself, and this speaks to you, and you want to fall in love with your dream. So tonight you will go to bed, you tell your subconscious, God, lead me to greatness, whatever your beliefs are, and plant the seed of success. And during the middle of the night, you get God talking to you in a dream. What you think it's a dream, and God speaks to you and says, Tony, I hear you. I hear your dreams. I want to help you. So all you have to do is travel outside of town. I'm going to give you directions to this farm. And inside this farm, there's a barn. All you have to do is get into that barn, and all your dreams will come true. So you wake up in the morning and you're wondering, oh my God, is this true? Did I really dream this? Or did God really talk to me? Did God really talk to me? So you have a split-second decision. God really spoke to me. So you get in your car, you have the directions to this farm, you travel out to that farm, and the barn is about half a mile from where you parked your car. So you get out of your car, you're so excited, and you run faster than you ever could run. And you get to this barn, and you slow down, and you can't see any doors. Can't see any windows. You go around to the back. No doors, no windows. There's no way that you can get into this barn. So now you're starting to doubt that God really spoke to you, but you're still determined to get into the barn. So you see a ladder, you climb the ladder, you get to the top of the roof, no chimney, no way to get in. As you come down the ladder, you're so discouraged, so upset at yourself that you believe that God spoke to you. And as your head is down, you're walking towards your car, and you've given up, totally given up on your dream. And immediately you fall into a pit. Now you're really pissed off. You've fallen into this pit. And before you know it, this pit, you realize it's quicksand. Mm. So now you're pissed. The quicksand is at your chest. It's getting close to your throat and your neck. And you realize at that moment that you could die. And fear comes into you. You don't want to die. You're too young. You got so much to accomplish. And you look above, and there's a tree there. And you thought to yourself, was that tree there all along? And you take off your jacket, you hook it up against the branch, and you pull yourself out of this this quicksand. Now you're determined to get back into that barn. So now you're running back and you stop. You can't believe what you're seeing. The door is there and it's wide open.
Mm.
So you walk into that barn so excited because your dreams is going to come true. You're going to win the lottery of your dreams. And the place is empty. You get to the middle of the post. There's a big post in the middle of the barn, and there's a mirror there. And written on the mirror, it says, Tony, I've been hearing you all these years. But you don't realize you're made of God and you can accomplish anything you put your mind to and you fall in love with. I believe in you.
Wow.
That was the message. So let me just go over the story and the metaphors in the story. See, God is always speaking to you when you are in love with your dream. When you're in love with a dream, he didn't stop speaking to after the disciples of Jesus Christ. If you're Christian or any other religion, he didn't stop speaking to these teachers. He has continued to speak all these years. But when you're in love with your dream, you're going to get these messages all the time. So don't doubt it. But what happens, our human self, you get to that barn, and because you doubt it so much, you could never see the door. It was always there, but you never saw the door. Mm. So you went back all dejected and fell into the quicksand. The metaphor of the quicksand is that when you don't have a dream, you're living your life by default. So you have all these things happening to you because you're living your life by default. And a lot of these things can be bad things, which you think you have no control of, but you do. But as soon as you made a decision that you didn't want to die, you found a way to get out of that pit. It was there all along because that decision, that commitment was there all along. So when you went back to that barn, the door was always there. You can now see it because you made that 100% commitment. Wow. And then when you got to the middle of the barn, so everyone's looking for stuff outside of us to make us successful, John. The right success system, the right tool to become the top distributor, the right people. These things are outside of us. So we're all looking for these tools to be that number one earner in our company, or top 10 in our company, or $1 million earner, 6-figure earner. But we don't realize all the power is within us. When you have a dream and you focus on that part and build yourself up, you will figure it out. It'll happen. So anyways, that's how, thanks very much for your time here today, John.
Well, Joe,
I enjoyed it.
This has been phenomenal. And just in wrapping up, this is John Solider. The name of this show is Leaving Nothing to Chance, based on the book Leave Nothing to Chance, where we interview great people like Joe Garcia. Awesome interview, Joe. I learned a lot, and I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and phenomenal. So thank you again for joining us. These shows, by the way, every week there's a new one that airs on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, and a number of other podcast networks around the world. So if you miss one, they are archived as well. We'll be releasing how we archive them shortly. So thanks again, Joe. And
totally recommend it, John. Totally recommend it. Your experience is like a diamond, and it's a shiny diamond. So listen to guys like John, because, and please pick up the book and share it with your teams, because those experiences that he shares are priceless.
Thank you, Joe.